Well, there's a reason why most Americans pay about twice as much in cell phone costs as countries, the other 33 OECD countries, Europeans, Brazilians. Mexico's probably the exception. Carlos Slim has a pretty good monopoly down there. But there's a reason why we pay so much more. You know, in France, for example, $34 unlimited cell phone use. Plus, on top of that, you get local phone calls to 70 different countries. Plus, on top of that, you get 100 megabyte internet service. Why? Because their government mandates competition. Ours doesn't. In fact, we were moving in the opposite direction. AT&T wanted to merge with T-Mobile, and the Department of Justice said, you know, the Clayton Act passed in the back of the 19-teens, kind of codifying and clarifying the Sherman Antitrust Act, says you can't do things like this if they're going to screw consumers. So let's check in with our old friend Seton Motley, the president of Less Government, the guy who wants to defend those who would screw consumers. Do I have that right, Seton?
No, you have it totally wrong. Your fundamental analysis of the marketplace is totally wrong. Additionally,
then why do the Europeans pay so much less than we do?
Because they have a much smaller tract of land with which to deal.
Not true. I can walk into any 7-Eleven or the equivalent of it in Germany. In fact, I've done it,
yes,
and I can buy a SIM card for 20 different phone companies to use on my phone.
We had this discussion. They don't have the topography and they don't have the land mass that we have. It's apples and bowling balls. You're comparing apples to bowling balls. Let's move beyond that.
So then why doesn't New York City have cheap phone service?
Because there's 6 or 7 million people in a postage stamp size of land.
How many companies are providing telephone service
in New York?
Is cell phone service in New York City? Cell phone service?
6 or 7.
Yeah. Well, I think you just made my point. There's probably 30 or 40.
If you want competition, there's 6 or 7.
6 or 7 is not competition, Seton.
What are you talking about? You were bitching about a monopoly.
I'm saying in Germany you can get 30 different companies. In France you can get over 120 companies.
Unpleasable. You guys are terminally whiny and unpleasable. You were complaining about a monopoly, then you were complaining about a duopoly. Now you're complaining about 6 or 7 isn't competition. You guys are whiny little unsatisfiable anti-free market bums is what you are. There's 6 or 7 competing in New York. That's not competition to you?
No.
That's absurd.
No.
Meanwhile, you want to have the one monopoly.
No, competition is when I was a kid and I'd walk into the local shopping center and every single store was locally owned. When I lived in Vermont and I could pick from several different telephone companies because the state of Vermont actually passed a law that said that even though Verizon owned the wires, which by the way had been put up by the Franklin Roosevelt administration during the REA, but in any case, because Verizon owned the wires, they had to let any other company license those wires. And so we bought our telephone service from Green Mountain Telephone, $25 a month, flat rate.
You had less choice in Vermont then than New York City does for cell phone now.
Not true.
Less. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Because you bitched about back then the Ma Bell monopoly and how monolithic they were. Meanwhile, you're inviting into the process.
This was post Ma Bell.
Monopoly on the planet. Would you let me finish the sentence, please?
Sure.
You're inviting into the process the biggest monopoly on the planet, which is the U.S. federal government.
The U.S. federal government is not engaged in the business of providing telephone service, so it's not a monopoly. It is a government. It's called We the People.
Progress like this merger. Look, let's look at this merger.
See, you don't want a government that represents we the people? You want a government that only represents the corporations?
We the people. Did we want Obamacare? No, but the government shoved it down our throats. Do we want the NLRB inserting itself illegally into the South Carolina situation to stop creation of jobs? No, but
the last time I looked, Seton, this was not the Soviet Union. We actually elect our representatives, and they do what we like, or we throw them out of office.
The representatives, Tom. These are not elected officials. These are agencies and commissions.
The Department of Justice answers to the President of the United States, and he was elected.
But guess what? These boards have to act based on laws passed by Congress.
Which is elected by we the people. And apparently you have a problem with that?
No, we're not. Tom, you don't know what you're talking about. These boards
please clarify me. Please help me understand, Stephen. Why is it that occasionally I get a sentence in here. It's okay. Why is it that if a country has 30 or 40 or 50 companies competing, and they have much lower rates than we do, and we have 5 or 6 companies competing, or arguably 3 or 4, and we pay obscenely high rates, that's somehow a good thing.
Tom, you don't know what you're talking about. You're totally woefully uninformed. The NLRB, the EPA act within the parameters of law.
We're talking about AT&T, T-Mobile, and the Department of Justice.
Tom.
You're changing the topic, Seton. You're changing the topic.
The EPA, no, you were talking about government inserting itself into areas it's not supposed to insert itself, like this merger, like the EPA, like the in our energy sector, like the NLRB.
What was the EPA created for?
The EPA is supposed to operate within laws passed by Congress.
It was created to protect the environment. That's why it's called the Environmental Protection Agency.
First of all, it's unconstitutional because it shouldn't exist. Second of all,
okay. So let's get back. If we're going to, if all of these digressions are going to take us back to the Constitution, let's get back to the Department of Justice telling AT&T that they can't, that the number 2 largest phone company in the country can't merge with the number 4. Why is that a problem?
Tom, can you buy Verizon, Tom? Can you buy Sprint, Tom?
I can't. I don't have enough money. Maybe Warren Buffett could.
Well, that's because you don't have any audience, but that's not my fault.
No, it's because I'm not a multi-billionaire. Regardless of the site, Rush Limbaugh with his $400 million couldn't buy Verizon or AT&T. Sorry.
It's in cell phone, Tom. Are you able to walk into a Verizon store and sign up for a plan on Verizon?
And pay 5 times as much as somebody in Europe? Sure.
Yes. Well, that's called not a monopoly, Tom, by the definition of the word. So this is not a monopoly. This is not monopolistic practices. In fact,
I am suggesting it is anti-free enterprise.
No,
it is anti-competition.
Exactly right. You exactly are right. You are anti-free enterprise, Tom.
I am anti-free enterprise because I want any small entrepreneur to be able to compete in a marketplace, and I would like our government to set the rules of the game of business such that if you, Seton, or I decided we wanted to go into the phone business and try to compete with a better product, we could do it.
We could. You know what raises the bar of entry? Government involvement. That's what raises the bar of entry because it raises the price to where only people like Verizon and AT&T can get into the business.
Right. So let's get government out of the business of allowing monopolies and go back to the rules that we used to have that said, sorry, you can't have a monopoly.
What monopoly are they preventing here, Tom? What monopoly are they preventing here?
Again, you're focusing on the fact that monopoly has mono in it. It means there's only one company.
Well,
obviously,
words mean things, Tom, and you're using
yes,
the
they
word,
do.
So I'm going to properly define it.
Thank you for correcting me, Seton.
Yes.
Why should we not look to those countries around the world that encourage free enterprise and competition?
They don't have free enterprise, Tom. They don't. We're becoming a socialistic European country.
France does not have free enterprise in telecom services.
Pardon me?
France does not have free enterprise and competition in cell phone services.
In part, yes. In part, no. But the fact of the matter is, it's
do they have more or less competition than we have here?
Tom, looking to Europe proves you don't understand the telecommunications.
Do they have more or less competition than we do here?
They have less.
How do they have less competition if they have more companies and lower prices?
We have more companies than they do, Tom.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do. The fact of the matter is they're regional companies.
Providing cell phone services? No, we don't.
Tom, you don't understand the business, Tom. You're inserting yourself into an area.
Well, educate me, Seton. We have a minute till a break. It's all yours.
Think of France is the size of Texas. So, of course, we have many more cell phone providers, but they're regional cell phone providers. Their regions are bigger than the entire country of France. We have many more providers than France does.
I'm talking about national providers.
But Tom, their nation is tiny. Of course.
Well, it's got 50 million people in it.
We have tons of regional providers here that provide service to greater areas than France is.
Okay. All right. Seton Motley, president of Less Government, Twitter @Seton, Seton Motley, Motley. Thank you, Seton.